Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing Ache,
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption, and everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And
this is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's another beautiful day, a great Monday morning, another beautiful time for us to talk about issues related to business, finance, national development, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. As you know that today we'll get the best of conversation for you. Today we'll be looking at global trade and partnership. Interestingly, today is United Nations, World Children's Day. It's also another day to do advocacy, to the victims of road accidents. We'll be looking at all these and many more. We hope that as you join us today, we'll make your day worthwhile. Don't forget that you can join us via our social media platform on our YouTube platform to share your view using the hashtag Early Exchange. We hope that as you join us for the next 3 hours, we're going to make your day worthwhile because we are set to give you the best of programming. We are set to inform you, to educate you, and entertain you for you to have a worthwhile Monday morning. Get set, whatever you have with you, your cup of, a cup of tea, your whatever it is, with your breakfast, get set as you are ready to make the day, more productive for you. Now, let's kick off, the program with news updates. We'll switch over to our newsroom now, and Adesua is standing by to take us around the world with news update. Adesua, good morning, and how are you today?
Good morning, Femi. I'm very well, thank you. And good morning to you, our viewers, and welcome to the morning news update right here on Souk News, your choice station for developmental news in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Adesua Iraboseli. First, the major headlines in the bulletin. President Tinubu inaugurates Innovation Center to empower students' entrepreneurial potentials. Federal Capital Territory Authority takes step to legalize scrap markets to boost business development. Zimbabwe declares state of emergency as cholera outbreak grips Harare. UK government embraces artificial intelligence to streamline administrative tasks. We'll take a breather, and when we return, we give you the news in full. Stay with us. Welcome back, and remember to follow and engage with us across our social media platforms. We are at Souk News. We'd love to hear from you. We begin in Nigeria, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has inaugurated a 1 billion naira worth international center for innovation and entrepreneurship at the University of Maiduguri. The facility, funded by Alhaji Abdul Samad Rabiu, includes various units such as artisans and handcraft laboratories, woodwork laboratories, and graphic and digital media laboratories. Vice President Kashim Shatima, who represented President Tinubu, commended Alhaji Rabiu for his contribution to the university and stated that it aligns with the current administration's renewed hope agenda. While responding, the chairman of the BUA group noted that the initiative was part of the African Corporate Social Responsibility Initiative to support social societies. Moving on, the Federal Capital Territory Administration, FCTA, has announced plans to legalize and regulate activities at scrap markets in the capital city. Additionally, the authority also aims to establish a paintaker enterprise hub that will provide shared facilities for operators in the scrap market, ensuring proper coordination of their operations and improving the environment. This initiative will allow operators to access business development services and government interventions to enhance their businesses. Furthermore, the Pantaker Hub will formalize the engagement of residents of the FCT involved in the use of waste materials like wood, aluminium, iron, and other metals. According to the acting managing director and CEO of Abuja Enterprise Agency, Chudi Ezirigwe, the hub will create a formal location for shared facilities and promote sustainability and profitability for businesses in the sector. Away from that, the Director General of the Security and Exchange Commission, SEC, Lamido Yuguda, has expressed confidence that the $1 trillion economic target set by President Bola Tinubu's government is achievable through the capital market during the recent Capital Market Committee meeting. Yuguda stated that the SEC is focusing on mobilizing capital market funds for infrastructure projects to realize the economic target by 2026. By addressing infrastructural deficit and providing a conducive business environment, Yuguda believes that the capital market will enhance Nigeria's production capacity and contribute to economic growth. He also emphasized the importance of market literacy and resolving the foreign exchange crisis to attract more investors. In a bid to curb the use of and distribution of illegal drugs and ensure the safety and well-being of young people in the country, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has issued a warning to parents regarding the presence of small decorative bottles in their children's belongings. These bottles are being used to package a substance known as loud or kolos, which has gained popularity among youths in upscale areas of Lagos, such as Lekki, Ikoyi, and Victoria Island, thereby urging parents to be vigilant and check for these bottles as they are being sold at a high price of 15,000 naira each. The agency's Director of Media and Advocacy, Femi Babafemi, stressed the importance of parents being aware of this trend and taking action to protect their children, adding that the agency is already taking action, making arrests and seizures in relation to this issue. The Managing Director of the Federal Housing Authority, FHA, Benga Ashafa, has stated that the authority needs a minimum of 500 billion naira to effectively reduce homelessness in the country. Ashafa revealed that the authority has constructed approximately 149,000 housing units over the 50-year span of its existence. Speaking at the press briefing ahead of the Housing Authority's 50th anniversary, Ashafa highlighted the significance of the housing sector in the economy and emphasized the positive impact the FHA has made by providing both direct construction and partnership-driven house units. He also expressed the authority's commitment to making housing more affordable through initiatives like the Rent-to-Own scheme. The Independent Petroleum Markets Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, says the pump price of petrol is likely to decrease in the coming days. This follows the availability of the product as a result of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation's massive imports of premium motor spirit PMS. The National Public Relations Officer of IPMAN, Ukadike Chinedu, who revealed this, added that once the products start reaching filling stations, the fuel price will reduce, as the recent high cost was due to a drop in supply. This development aligns with the confirmation from the Nigerian Port Authority that 18 ships carrying fuel and other items have arrived at Lagos Port. Recently, there has been fuel queues in some parts of the country, including Abuja, Nasarawa, and Niger State. However, with the increased imports and the products becoming more available, the fuel scarcity issue is expected to be resolved soon. We go on a quick break. When we return, we'll bring you foreign news. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's good to know you are still with us. Now on to the foreign scene. Tens of thousands of candidates, including those vying for the presidency, kicked off a month-long election campaign in the Democratic Republic of Congo amidst a tense political climate and ongoing armed conflict in the eastern part of the country. Despite logistical challenges, the Electoral Commission is determined to conduct the elections as scheduled, with over 44 million registered voters expected to participate in choosing their president and legislative representatives. However, concerns remain regarding the technical capacity of the Commission and the credibility of the electoral process, while the crisis in the East, including the resurgence of the M23 rebellion, adds another layer of complexities to the situation. Elsewhere, Zimbabwean government has declared a state of emergency in Harare due to a severe cholera outbreak that has impacted the capital city, with over 7,000 suspected cases and nearly 150 deaths reported since February. The disease has affected all provinces of the country. Harare alone has recorded 12 deaths. Cholera is caused by a bacterium transmitted through contaminated food or water, highlighting the importance of practicing good hygiene by washing hands with soap and consuming boiled or treated water. In response to the outbreak, the Health Ministry and aid groups are working together to increase water supply and raise awareness about preventive measures in affected areas. However, the country faces challenges such as unreliable drinking water supplies and inadequate infrastructure in some cities. In another development, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan has made a significant directive to provide medical care for 1,000 Palestinian cancer patients from the Gaza Strip. These patients will receive essential treatment and health care in UAE hospitals, demonstrating the UAE's unwavering commitment to supporting the Palestinian people and addressing escalating humanitarian situation in Gaza. Additionally, the president has also instructed for the hosting of 1,000 Palestinian children and their families in the UAE, where they will receive comprehensive health care services until they recover fully. Moreover, a fully equipped field hospital will be established in the Gaza Strip as part of the Gallant Night 3 operation to meet the humanitarian needs of these affected people. Following his abrupt dismissal as CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman is reportedly in talks to potentially return to the company while also considering launching a new artificial intelligence venture. Altman is said to be discussing improvements on OpenAI's governance structure with executives, while exploring the possibility of starting a new AI company with core OpenAI researchers and loyal individuals. The situation remains uncertain, with discussions ongoing. Investors, including Microsoft, OpenAI's largest backer, are concerned about the impact of Altman's departure and may push for his reinstatement as CEO to retain top talent. Also, Chancellor of the Exchequer Jeremy Hunt said he would deploy £4.5 billion of fund into 8 manufacturing sectors, including cars and green industries, as he seeks to bolster industries the government sees as key to growing the UK economy. The funding includes £2 billion for the automotive industry, £960 million for clean energy, and £975 million for aerospace. And finally, on the news, the UK government is embracing the use of artificial intelligence to streamline administrative tasks and enable police officers, teachers, and health workers to prioritize their frontline responsibilities. A review conducted by the government revealed that teachers often spend a day each week on tasks such as data input and daily reports. By reducing administrative workload, police officers will have more time dedicated to addressing crime. The implementation of AI technology will assist in automating these administrative tasks, freeing up valuable time for professionals in the education and law enforcement sectors to enable them focus on their core duties. And that's it on the morning news update right here on Souk News. Many thanks for watching. Amadesua Eramosele. Early Exchange continues in a moment. Stay with us.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing H.A.
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption. And everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million and...
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, glad you have you join us once again. It's time for news analysis, where we review the major headlines trending today. And you can be rest assured that you get the best of analysis when it comes to Early Exchange. We're prepared to give you the best and always the best. As usual, the wise ones are here. Our in-house analysts usually call them the wise ones because they have the right counsel and the right analysis. Blessing, good morning. How are you today?
I'm fine. Good morning, Femi.
Morning. How's your weekend?
Well, it is restful, and here I am this morning feeling great.
I love your touch of blue.
Yes, I got the memo
Oh,
that you
really?
sent.
Yeah.
Because I see what I wear compliments you.
Yeah,
as well.
that's it. He's great. You look like a princess from the Benin Kingdom.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
right about that.
Yeah.
But that's something that I don't tell people. You're not
really?
the proud type.
Okay, but it's part of your CV anyway. The wise one is here. Idahosa Osamanze. How are you doing this morning?
Femi, good morning.
How are you today?
Blessing, good morning.
Good to see you.
And dear viewers, good morning.
It's a beautiful day, beautiful Monday morning.
Oh,
So
yes.
let's set the ball rolling with our president, who in recent times has become the #1 person marketing Nigeria. Is quite interested in getting investment into Nigeria. But this time around, the president has inaugurated 1 billion naira worth of International Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of Maiduguri. A few days ago, we talked about the need to review academic curriculum, whereby you give room for not just the conventional, educational studies, but also give room for entrepreneurship, skill acquisition. And University of Maiduguri seems to be setting the pace now, with this project being sponsored by an individual, that's the chairman of Bra Group, the Alhaji, Sami Rabiu. Now, this project includes various units such as handcraft laboratories, woodwork laboratories, graphic and digital media laboratories. It's quite important this time around to provide a narrative. Interestingly, it's like a CSR, what you call CSR for the company, corporate social responsibility. It's worth about 1 billion naira. I find that to be very interesting. Most importantly, the greatest challenge when it comes to the issue of skill acquisition or floating earning program has to do with the issue of funding. And now that this organization is taking that initiative, it's setting the pace for us to have this kind of entrepreneurship program where young people, students are being empowered to get the best of entrepreneurship. Let me take this to Idahosa, who is also an entrepreneur. What's your take on this laudable project?
Well, I think it's a very welcome development, and this is what we've been all talking about from time to time, where you see you're having an intellectual environment, then of course you're having a laboratory, and the fund is also within that environment to really translate ideas into reality. And I think this would be very beautiful, but I am also hoping that the university is also prepared really to leverage this opportunity. But I think, like I've always said here, we need to be a little more strategic in terms of funding and these development issues. I was just been thinking, you see, we've talked about this synergy between the town and the gown, where we'll see that this is a major player in rice business, a major player in cement factory. I really had wished that this kind of funding was tailored to his area of interest, where you actually have trained people and empowered them to see how they can locally contribute to that industry. it will just be fantastic. But all said, it's a very welcome development for me, and I think this is all that Nigeria needs. Like we have said, it is not possible for government to fund education as it were, like it's done in other climes. You see a lot of people invest in university system, funding research to see how they can translate ideas into products and services, and this is what is happening, and he's blazing the trail. We also expect other billionaires around us to do same. Tony Elumelu has been doing great in that regard. So it's just an appeal to all Nigerians who God has blessed to understand that if the children of the poor are not taken care of, the children of the rich will not be able to sleep with their eyes closed.
Yes, that is very true. I like that it is entrepreneurship development for students, because it doesn't mean that you have to have graduated, tried your luck, or so to speak, at the labor market. When you can't find a white-collar job, that's when you put in your thinking cap and you're thinking of what's next to do. But while you're studying, there are skills that you could learn as a student, and if you are the type that is very innovative, you could sharpen those skills and become very innovative while you're still in school. But I would want that it is designed in such a way that you can monitor what every student does within the spirit. So it's not as if, oh, because it's done in the university, it is to fulfill all righteousness, but you're actually learning something. And over time, there is a monitoring. What have you done 1 year after? If you've passed out of the school, what have you done with the skills that you learned to ensure that it is very effective? And I would like to see that this is done in other universities, even in polytechnics. And the skills that they learn, they are up-to-date skills. The innovation is done in a way that is collective, so people are not left in silos. Their innovative skills are enhanced. So I would like to see that happen, so that it can be sustained, because there's a lot of money and the initiative is a nice one, but let's follow it through to ensure that it becomes very, very productive at the end of the day.
You know, a few years back, the narrative was study hard, read hard for you to have good grades and get good job. I remember that was the narrative when I was in the university. In fact, skills acquisition, entrepreneurship was seen as a distraction. All you needed to do at that time to ensure you have first class or second class upper, then get a white collar job. That was the narrative. But I'm happy the narrative is changing now, because the situation that we've found ourselves in was that after graduation, we started looking for a job. And then, in fact, most of us, what we did was after graduation, that was when we now enrolled for skill acquisition programs. But I'm happy a university like that of Maiduguri is bringing up this initiative to change the narrative, whereby, like Idahosa said, there's a uniformity between the town and the gown. The reality you're going to face as a graduate, because we're in the age of technology, we're in the age of entrepreneurship, we're in the age of skill acquisition. So the reality is, when you graduate, you still conform with this reality. So it's important for you to be armed with the right skills while in the university, yes, not when you're graduated and then you are thrown into the labor market to start looking for jobs. So with this kind of arrangement, what it means is an average graduate has the tendency to create jobs.
I don't think it should be for every graduate, and I think it should be tailored to the area of people's interest. And I think this, for me, is where we really need to work hard on our curriculum. You see, because there's a whole lot of distraction. The society needs a potpourri of intellectuals. We need philosophers, we need sociologists, we need medical scientists, we need workers. We need metal workers, people who are going to be able to be fabricators. Now, this should be targeted, such that you're not distracting somebody who is supposed to be in core research, and the energy that is supposed to be focusing on research is transferring it to skill acquisition. So this of course will be very destructive, and this is what I'm saying. We have to be a little more strategic in the way some of all these things are done. What you need to do really to see that, okay, this chap is studying, maybe give them a BSc in carpentry, for example.
Create new courses.
New courses, yes, that are tailored toward that area. So they are both doing the theory and they are in the lab also practicing that same trade. So in that case, you are building people for industry.
But in this age where, the advocacy is you need to have multiple sources of income, don't you think it's also important
there's
to
nowhere,
have a
there's
blend
nowhere in the world that is
entrepreneurship?
happening, and it cannot happen. Yes, you can have multiple sources of income. The fact that you are having multiple sources of income does not mean that you have to be a mechanic and a carpenter at the same time. So what that means is that if you earn some money, you can put it somewhere that is generating some things for you. You can be doing something by the side, which of course is not conflicting with the things you're doing every day. You see, but where we're looking at skills is the fact that skills serve society. What we should be actually focusing on is that look at the area of our society where there are some gaps, and how do we fill these gaps? You need people who are good. Maybe we just ask LG or Panasonic air conditioner manufacturer, give some people some skill that if your AC or your car is having issues, you have people who are well fitted. They are trained as mechanical engineers. They're actually mechanics. That's the kind of skills they're talking about. So these people can even be thinking of building models while they are in put things together and couple them, and then of course that's where innovation will come from. But if you make it and see it's like all students common affair, somebody is doing maybe medicine can come and be learning woodwork, that can become really very distracting. That's the point I'm making.
But I think that everybody can be entrepreneur. It depends on the side of it that you're on. For instance, a medical student, it may not be woodwork, it may be tech, it may be digital marketing, it may be something not so strenuous, not so distracting, but can also enhance what they do. Yeah. So I think it's for the students to be given the freedom to pick. But as you have guidance counselor in secondary schools, as you have your advisor, your course advisor in the universities, you could work with your course advisor to think, okay, this is what you're studying. What would go with this that would not distract you, but also equips you with a skill that you would need? Because I agree with Femi that people need multiple streams of income. If you find people who are even having good white-collar jobs, venturing into one business or the other. So if we are to streamline it in that way, we may be cutting out some persons from benefiting from something like this. Yes, I agree. There is a need for us to have new courses channeled towards this. But as it is right now, with the system that we currently have, we can also enhance it.
Yeah, but you see, in the early 2000s, this a campaign among psychologists and management scholars about what they call multitasking as something that was very useful. But today, in leadership and management, nobody talks about multitasking because it doesn't give room for effectiveness and efficiency. It does not allow for people to actually put in their best. You see, when you are focused and you zero on one thing, you become a master in that thing. So that is the point. If you want to become a medical doctor, be the best of medical doctor. If you want to become an engineer, be the best of an engineer. You see, the problem we have as a country is that the driving force of every man here is always money. Money should not be the driving force. The truth is that if you are able to create a system that will solve a problem, you will not be looking for multiple sources of income. That is the truth. You see, what you do is the fact that, you see, in other places, people are driven by their passion or a desire to solve societal problems. Now, as you are solving societal problems, depending on the crowd that you are serving, that will give you the value. So when people serve in a particular area and they feel they have conquered it elsewhere, they can move into another area where they feel that there's also so much gap. So it's always not money the driving force. If money becomes the driving force, you will find that we cannot do things and do them thoroughly. And this is a problem that we have as a people. And that will talk about accessibility to international market, where people can actually zero in and focus on something and do it very well. And then you see the result. And then, of course, we can really be making plenty of money. Because money is always secondary, but not should be the primary focus and the driving force for any enterprise.
Agreed, but not every doctor is like Ben Carson. Or will be like Ben Carson. I think that's the reality.
Every doctor should strive to be like a Ben Carson.
I would say it's good you have expertise in something, but it's also good you have a bit of everything around you, whether skills, whether tech, whatever it is. As long as you have the opportunity, just take advantage of it, because you don't know where you'll be tomorrow. You might be in position to solve problems related to those areas. Then you can have a voice.
The name of the game today is excellence.
All right, let's move on to what the Director General of Security and Exchange Commission, Lamido Yuguda, is saying. He has expressed confidence that the $1 trillion economy target set by President Tinubu's government is achievable through the capital market. I like this. You know, the DG of the Security and Exchange Commission is saying, hey, President, if the $1 trillion target you're looking for, you need to look at direction. He's talking about the capital market. In recent times, the president has been passionate about generating revenue. That's why, which has informed some of his trips in recent times, he's so passionate about getting foreign direct investment. So that's to tell you the nature and the persona of the president. He's interested in getting money to solve problems. So much has been expected of the president. But the Director General of Security and Exchange Commission is saying, hey, Mr. President, you have to look our way. You need to generate the $1 trillion economy target. Are you optimistic this might be a reality?
Yeah, I'm very, very optimistic, and I really know that there are a whole lot of areas, especially in capital market, that has not been explored. And if you remember the last trip of the president to Onga, he had to visit the New York Stock Exchange, and of course to go ring the closing bell. That was quite also significant to see how we can synergize with other basic stock markets globally. That of course, if Nigerian stocks are being traded overseas, and even Nigerians in diaspora are now beginning to have, confidence in our stock market, and they are putting their money in here. You see a whole lot of expansion that can happen. And I think that even $1 trillion is small if done properly. But I think what people just want to see is that they want to see that governance is in place, that even these corporations are run very well. One of the problems we'll have actually in terms of the businesses or corporations in Nigeria is that there are little governors. And you see the chairman, because he's having so much and controlling share in a particular company, determine how it's run. And sometimes they give loans, especially when it's the banking system, and they have this take here, take money here, take money here. We live lavish lifestyle. The salary of CEOs are not fixed and things like that. So these are the things that, of course, really will make people not to have confidence in your market. Now, if businesses are run properly and everybody knows what the CEO take, and the salaries of the top management is not on the rooftop that will crumble the business, a lot of people will begin to get interest in this market, because this is actually what it is. You find that some companies, they have been in operation for the past 10 years and they have not even given dividend to the people who have invested, which is not good enough. It's either they are not making profit, or they are saying, we're trying to expand and all these things. Because every man who put ₦1 down for a business is hoping to, at the end of the year, the fiscal year, should be able to earn a dividend that say, I have investment and I'm making money here. And now if the dividend to the investors are not encouraging, nobody will want to put money in there. You can imagine that you are going to stock maybe 10,000 naira in a year, and at the end of the year you can't even earn 50 naira as dividend. That's not good enough. Now I think that's where, of course, all the captains of our industry will really need to see how to scale down overhead, so that at least there'll be something left for the investors. In this way, you will have confidence in the market. People, even the local people, want to put money. Today, people are not investing in the stock because they feel that, of course, it's not profitable. So if, of course, we can begin to guarantee from the boardroom that things are done well, there's governance in place in these sectors, and I think really that is a small amount compared to the size of our economy, given our population and, of course, the natural resources that God has given to us.
Yes, I think what the DG of the Securities and Exchange Commission SEC has done is smart. Coming up to say yes, this is where you can actually achieve that from. Kudos to the Nigerian Stock Exchange. They've actually done well in recent time. If you look at the markets across Africa, one of the very stable markets that you find is the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And like it also said, if you have foreign investors, even if you have Nigerians in the diaspora, put money in it, it will grow. There are some sectors that have been consistent in terms of growth and having closing in the positive. Trading has always been good there. You talk about the banking sector, the telecom sector, but even consumer goods, you find that some companies doing very well. But I would also want to see other companies being able to enlist in the stock exchange. And if we have good corporate governance, I think that if a lot of these companies enforce good corporate governance, then the issues that you talked about will actually be addressed. And then profit declaring too, because people want to see the transparency. If you're looking from outside, you want to see how much of profit they're making, and you would want to even see maybe testimonials from investors who have received dividends. That could go a long way in convincing people who are on the fence right now to say, okay, maybe this is a good venture. Why do people buy crypto? It's because they feel, yes, the returns that come from it is much, and they can tell when to pick their money, even though the market is somehow volatile. But for the Securities and Exchange, if there is enough awareness on how things operate, and the companies trading there do become more transparent by declaring, then I think more persons, even locally, would want to invest in it. So it's a good one. It's very achievable. And I agree totally with you that the $1 trillion mark can even be surpassed. It would do what is right to ensure that the Securities and Exchange Commission receives lots of investment. And just imagine if some companies or some stocks in Nigeria are being traded in the US market, are being traded in the Europe market. So you have different people putting their money in there.
Absolutely. I also agree with you that it's a possibility, you know, if you look at the tendencies there, if the right business environment is provided, you know, the right infrastructure is provided. But my concern is, I don't want a situation whereby you talk, you just say this, what are the plans to ensure that the target is achieved? I want to believe this is not just another...
Yeah, but I think really everybody is excited about what Mr. President is doing, especially with the Oyedele committee trying to review the tax reform, because it's also a major barrier or hindrance to the development in that sector. Now, if government will provide that framework that facilitates trade, even between nations, and of course, people invest. If people bring in dollar into this economy today, really, for investment, and of course, they are able to take their money out, is another thing that's also very good. But you know, before now, in the last 8 years, it was very difficult for you to actually spend $100, even on your card. It was capped. So all these things were quite discouraging for a lot of investors. So you bring money into an economy and you can't take it out. So what Mr. President has said now is that it is possible for you to bring in your money, make your profit in here, and take it out. And one of the things that is actually working for me as a person, not to sing of anybody's praise, is the level of sincerity that the current CBN governor has brought to the running of CBN. And he has been quite transparent. And even the Minister of Finance has been telling us, yes, reform are coming. They are going to give us... see, this kind of honest conversation can only but build trust in your system, that people are looking at it. And that's why, if you remember the last time, the president says, yeah, we are doing our own, but there is one organ that is left to also help us achieve this goal, and that is the judiciary. And that's also very fundamental. Because if your justice system is cumbersome, people are also afraid. And no, so if I get into trouble, I can't get justice. So once we can see a judiciary also that is now very responsive, then of course you can see that the executive side, they're doing their bit, the market is doing its bit, and then of course the arbiter because of course sometimes business go wrong, are also up to their game, then you'll find that there'll be a lot of confidence. People who want to bring in money, and it will just work right well.
All right, let's move on. Let's take the story related to the pump price of petrol. And it's looking like another good news. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria is saying that petrol is likely to decrease in the coming days. The price of petrol is likely to, due to the availability of products as a result of the Nigerian, provision being made by the NNPC. NNPC is the sole importer of oil in Nigeria, and in recent times...
Not the sole. That was before.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
They are still the sole right now because a lot of marketers can't have access to Forex, and so...
No. A lot of people are bringing in petrol. They are not the sole anymore. They used to be the sole importers.
Officially, they're not the sole, but in reality, they seem to be the sole.
No.
They are the major player when it comes to that.
Yeah. They are a major player. Yeah. I think that's a better language to use.
They're the major player here. But you must understand that the issue of Forex has been of concern in recent times, because for the independent marketers, it's a challenge. You look at the exchange rate, it's not a tea party anymore. Even before now, when, NNPC was just the sole distributor, it was just because of the issue of Forex. That was why, okay, the government felt, okay, to arrest the situation, let NNPC come into this vacuum, to solve this problem and then access Forex officially. But how many of these independent marketers will be able to access Forex officially? They go to the, to the parallel market to access. And if you look at the exchange rate, it's killing. So it's not a joke, but I'm happy this time around that, maybe due to the availability of this product, because the scarcity of this product will also add to the hike in the price. And Nigerians, for who we are, I don't like to use that word, but pardon me, the point is, once you sell something for 1,000 naira now, the tendency that that thing is going to be reduced is always not there. So this is coming at a time, towards the end of the year, where there will be demands for this product and all that. It also talked to us. Do you think this will be of impact in a few days?
Yeah, I quite really agree, because you see, this is a point that I always advocate, that governments are not controllers, they are supposed to be facilitators. And if you facilitate business, a whole lot of things can happen. What you're seeing here, NNPC is just preempting the situation. Because you look at it, we said it last week, you have 5 modular refineries that are set, who actually have received crude, and they're going to refine, and they're allowed to sell in the local market. Dangote said is also expecting some crude. Now, when all these things get into the system, it's just a common, simple law of demand and supply. So if you see that Dangote is selling, and of course the cost of logistics is removed and it drags its own price down, NNPC has no other alternative, then they have to review their template. So all where those monies have been eaten have to be removed so that they can actually compete. Otherwise, they will be off business like old Nitel. So this is what market forces can do. And this is why everybody is saying, government, leave businesses alone to compete. And when there is healthy competition, the consumer, they benefit. Now, what will this mean? People will become more prudent in terms of negotiation. People will go lean, they will cut their costs. Because all the overheads of NNPC is part of the money we are paying at the pump price. So if, of course, competition is facilitated, this money will go down. And, of course, fuel price will come down. It's just natural. So this can happen. Yes, they said, oh, they have imported so much, like the NPA said, about 18 vessels are on the high seas for discharge. But we are hoping that in the days to come, as these modular refineries are working, of course, the 680,000 barrel single line of Dangote's refinery is producing fuel. Then there will be no fuel in the market. Anybody who wants to smuggle fuel can go ahead and smuggle. And then, of course, it will not be affecting our economy, but can only enhance it.
Well, it should be a relief for the states that were already experiencing fuel scarcity, such as the FCT, Niger State, and I think Nasarawa State. they're just around the same area, so experiencing fuel scarcity, this should be comforting news. But like Femi asked, is this something that we'll get to, is this a relief that Nigerians will get in a couple of days? Well, I don't think it's going to be that fast, but maybe over like a week or two, they should begin to get the relief. Saying that it's going to bring about a drop in the price of petrol for other areas that didn't quite experience fuel scarcity. I don't think there will be an immediate drop. It will take all that you just explained, the modular refineries working, Dangote refinery producing, for that drop to actually happen. Because by this importation, I think it's going to remain at the same pump price. It's only those that were already experiencing a hike due to the fuel scarcity that might just be having some relief in terms of the price. But good to know that there's availability, because we're fast getting into the Yuletide, and it's not a good time at all for fuel scarcity to be experienced, because that will mean that the prices of transportation, goods and services will increase. And you know, this is a time where a lot of festivities happen. People will at the very least.
All right, time is not on our side, but let's move on. I want us to take the train of our news analysis to the UK, where the UK government is embracing the use of AI, artificial intelligence, to streamline administrative tasks and enable police officers, teachers and health workers to prioritize their frontline responsibilities. Now, you have a station now, some of the core responsibilities that ought to be performed by health workers, police officers will be taken over by AI. What that means is, instead of having human interface all the time, you have a situation where technology is being deployed into these areas, and then that gives opportunity or more time for these health workers, police officers to have more time for other basic responsibility. You agree with me, we're in the age of AI now. It's changing everything, it's ravaging everything, it's the rave of the moment. I hope perhaps AI won't take over our presentation very soon.
Of course, there's a possibility.
It has done that in some areas, but it cannot do it completely. You still
there's a possibility, but then of course, like I said, there's no way AI can run itself. It will still need humans to run it, maybe at the back end or whichever. So, but you see, we cannot run away from technological innovations, and these innovations are coming, and they are meant to make job easier, work better, and then of course we are getting more excellence in terms of service delivery, and this is what actually it is. There are some things that we should really not bother ourselves about, because we are also looking at, people are talking about teachers are not too much in numbers, police are not too many, and then of course you remember there was a whole lot of exodus of teachers from the UK to Asia to Australia, because a lot of they were paying more, Asian government were paying more teachers, and of course every worker is looking for where you get a better pay. And at a certain point, you remember early this year, the United Kingdom opened some certain portal for Nigerian teachers to also come to the UK. So all these are things that are happening, and of course we must look for technology to bridge the gaps in between these movements that is being created by labor. So you have a shortage of labor. Then of course we're saying what role technology can play in bridging that gap. And I think that's a smart one from Rick Sunak.
Yeah, good to know, but some persons will still prefer that human interface. Yeah, but well, we're going digital. We've been digital, but going more digital. It's a good one. And for what you were saying, in regards to what you were saying on Friday about excellence, and that one of the problems here in Nigeria, people have someone to call. I just imagine if we have that kind of system running, and you have robots doing the job of police officers. So it means you can't even talk to anybody, because the robot don't understand who you're calling, and they cannot take phone and say, "Oh, God wants to speak to you." It's like that. But that's on the lighter side. But it's a good one, even though people fear that this may mean loss of job for some persons who may not be able to adapt to the new system. But I think before you get caught up, or before it gets to that point, what people should be doing is to find how they can upskill, so that whatever the change may be, it doesn't affect you. It only means that you move up to a different level.
Yeah, people always talk about cutting job, and I remember some time ago we were having this same conversation, and somebody said, you see, the AI industry is going to create about 15 million jobs globally. But of course, it will also cut about 25 million jobs. So that's certain. And it's not because that the AI is cutting jobs, it's just because there's a lot of people who get platooned that they don't want to grow anymore, and they are so used to the manual way of doing things and they cannot embrace new technology. But I really feel that it's not as if that job cut is actually that it's creating a new industry with a new specialty, unique competencies that are required. All that is just required is that people have to update their skill or upskill, like you've said, and then be able to fit into the new arrangement. And some people can actually also take into other enterprises. Entrepreneurial spirit is what people talk about today. You can learn a new thing and actually become your own boss rather than just working and taking peanuts from government.
Talking about AI, if you look at the impact of job creation and efficiency, if you do, the mathematics or you weigh it, you discover that the merit outweighs the demerit. And in this situation, it's a reality we have to live with. So I'm hoping, like I said earlier, AI will not take over news analysis.
Sure, it will do it better.
AI will do news analysis, but you see, that human interaction is what a lot of persons will miss. So there are certain things that will still remain human, will still need humans to handle them. It's like you going to see a doctor. Yes, the robot can treat you, but sometimes people just want that empathy from a fellow human. People just want to see their smiling face. You can have a robot smile, but it's still not like a human smile.
It's all about machine learning. Yeah. You see, AI can just look at blessing. Create a blessing and put it on the seat, and then of course we'll be interacting. Yeah. It can replicate and duplicate so it's possible. All that is just studying you and learning your language and learning your mannerism, and there will be nothing different between blessing and AI.
There will be. I have parts too that you haven't seen, and it's kept away from AI.
Yeah, recently in the Hollywood, it has been of concern to whereby AI might likely take over the role of actors and all that. But that's just for another day. I must appreciate you for your input. That was, I think, the wise man and the wise lady here too. Thank you so much for your input. All right, on that note, we'll go on a short break. When we return, our major story for today, that's our major discussion for today, will kick off. All you have to do is stay with us, and then it's early exchange. We'll be back shortly.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And
this is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the early exchange. Like you know, our obligation on this program is to shape policy and advance development. Today, our conversation, we're looking at UN's World Children's Day, which was created in 1954 as Universal, Children's Day to celebrate the rights of children and to also draw the awareness on the need to promote togetherness and also bring advocacy to the welfare of children all over the world. As far as Nigeria is concerned, it's a special day. There are a lot of activities that are going to take place today to look at the rights of every child and the need to prioritize the welfare of every child in Nigeria. Joining us via Zoom is Ronke Poch Adeni, who is the director of the Poch School. She will be in position to be a guest analyst, and she will be in position to give us an insight when it comes to child rights and welfare in Nigeria. Ronke, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange this morning. All right, Ronke, good to see you this morning. How are you today?
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
We'll have a smooth conversation. All right, great. Glad to have you on Early Exchange this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, today is UN World Children's Day. I would like to have your take on, how significant it is to have a special day like this dedicated towards child's rights and welfare all over the world. And what would be your expectation on a day like this?
Okay, so on a day like this, like you said, this is historic and it's been happening for many years. On a day like this, I would expect that people are reminded of how important children are in society. It's important that people are reminded. It's important that people take it seriously, understanding that the children are indeed the future of our nations, that we are supposed to invest in them, and whatever we invest in them at this point in time is what we're going to reap ultimately. So we need to take whatever it is that we're pouring into them right now, their values, their education, even their health, and so many other things. This needs to be prioritized all the time, but it's a day for us to celebrate the children and also to remind ourselves that they are very important. Our work is not more important than our children. We need to prioritize them.
All right, Ronke, good to see you again. When you talk about children's rights in Nigeria or around the world, what are some of the rights of children that people should know about?
I mean, children should have basic fundamental rights that everyone has. Food, clothing, shelter, and education has been added to it. Very, very important that children have these things. And as we know, in many countries, not just in Africa, not just Nigeria, there are children that are going on empty stomachs. There are many children this morning that don't know when they're going to get their next meal. The children on the streets, sleeping on the street. There are parents that are begging with their children on the streets. There are children that are going around in knickers, in their underwear. The children that they don't even know what technology is, not to talk of basic education, the children that need these things. These are the basics to life. These are the fundamentals to rights, and amongst other things. But let's just start with those basics, human rights.
Talking about child's rights and welfare, how will you rate the level of public awareness and the adherence to these rights in a country like Nigeria and by extension looking at the African continent?
If I'm going to rate it, I wouldn't say it's something that is well rated. We see children on the streets. We see children, we hear and we see on the news. We see children in classrooms that don't have roofs, that don't have boards, that don't have furniture, that don't have toilets in them. We see children roaming the streets, begging, and we've normalized it. It's normal. So we just give them the change in our purses or in our pockets that we no longer want. It's not something that is being prioritized. We see that there's just millions and millions and millions of out-of-school children. The COVID-19 pandemic also highlighted how many children, in fact, they are uncountable, because we all know what data can be like in countries like Nigeria. So many children out of school, so many children not eating, not even healthcare is a challenge. So if I'm going to rate it, it's going to be really, really low. it's going to be really, really low.
So what are some of the challenges to the provision of children's rights in an environment like ours, I mean Nigeria?
Some of the challenges, I think the challenges start with ourselves as individuals. It starts with leadership as well, because this is where these sort of things begin. Our leaders prioritizing our children as a nation. If they prioritize our children as a nation, these are the things that we would see that are happening in the country. So I want to start with leadership. Leadership ought to understand that and that our children are very important and they should be prioritized. They should have food, clothing, shelter, and they should have basic education.
All right, talking about the rights of a child, one of the rights has to be the right to education. If you look at the statistics for Nigeria, you know, the number of adult school children, it's alarming. What's your take on this, and how can we change the narrative now on a day like this that is important to draw advocacy to the right of children, you know, having rights to education?
There's a lot to say when it comes to the education of our children. What are we doing about our children? And we're not just talking about the early years. Whilst that is important, we also see tertiary education. We also hear all the time, there's always one university or the other, or one body or the other going on strike. How are we prioritizing these matters in a country like Nigeria? It's not something that we take very, very seriously. It's making us less competitive. It's making us have children and youth that are not taking their life seriously. They are engaging in antisocial behaviors. We hear about ritualistic killings. We hear about what they call the Yahoo these days, and so many other things that are happening. Even not having basic education sometimes keeps these children on the streets. They are begging, or they are trading for their parents. They are hawking things around, which also leads to abuse of our children. Some of them are abused verbally, physically, sexually, and in different ways. So I could go on. The challenges are really, really deep and ingrained in the system.
Okay, let's look at some of the rights of children that may be infringed upon even by their parents, maybe ignorantly. So the rights of children are categorized into different levels. There is the right to development. There is a right to participation. I'm going to look at participation now and also development. For participation, according to the UN standard, this includes rights that enables the children have right to freedom of expression, association, and participation in decision-making process. In fact, the decision-making process may make you laugh, because over here or in a lot of places, it is seen as if children have no say. Parents decide for them in every matter. So as a parent, how do you ensure that while you're also doing what is best for your child, you also give them the room to be a part of the decision-making process? Let's start from there.
Well, culturally, like you've pretty much alluded to, culturally, it's not something that we tolerate in Nigeria. We don't even want children to be heard. Don't talk while adults are talking is a common saying. It's rude if a child's voice is heard where they're adults. So when you talk about freedom of expression, it's probably not there in many homes. When it comes to participation, it's pretty much do what you are told whilst you're under my roof. When you have your own roof, then you can do whatever it is that you want. But right now, whilst you're under my roof, you have to do exactly what I'm telling you to do. And we see these days, irrespective of the total status of the family, you still find that these things happen. Even right down to the career choices that the children make. They are forced to take courses that they don't enjoy, or toe paths that they do not want to. And this is because this command and control, this authoritarian kind of parenting exists in our society a lot. So yeah, like you said, these are pretty much non-existent in many homes. And another thing is that there's poverty, and when there's poverty, it limits our options. It doesn't give us a lot of options. So even as parents, when you know that you don't have the funds to do things. So let's give you a basic example of even dinner, for example. If there's no other option as to, we're only going to have noodles tonight, there's no option. So really, what are we talking about? This is that or nothing. These are the kind of things that we have in our society today.
Let's be real here and be practical here. At what point do you strike a balance between granting your children autonomy or freedom, between granting them that freedom and then looking at their safety, because at a critical stage like this, they could be naive looking at the age and inexperience. So how do you strike the balance as a parent?
That's where parenting education is very important. We have to understand that children have personality types. We have to understand that children mature at different levels. We have to understand that whilst the child's decision will not always take precedence in the home, it is still important for us to hear from the child. It's still important for us to know their views. And we have to also understand that in this day and age, the teachers or the parents are not the fountain of knowledge. There's access to technology these days, and that also allows children to learn and know a lot, even in certain areas significantly more than those that are the primary caregivers. So it's important to hear from them. Yes, the children may be naive, however, their views are still important. What they have to say is still valid. And where it is something that could put them at risk, it's important that we explain these things to the children. We also have a culture where it's what I say, my way or the highway. In this day and age, if you're not explaining to a child the reason why they shouldn't do something, if you're just telling them no with no reason, you find that they're very curious. That is when they're going to do it. That's when they're going to explore and toe that path of danger.
Children who have grown up in an environment where their own opinion were not sought, or they weren't persuaded to come to the side of the parents regarding a decision, what does that produce in them when they become adults? What kind of people do they become?
We have the kind of people that leaders that don't listen to people in society. Look at what is happening in Nigeria. How often are the voices of the Nigerian heard? How often are the things that we say? How significant are our protests when we even go out there and protest? We kind of like repeat the same cycle. And it is said that insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And you find that is exactly what we're doing. So this is how my parents brought me up, and I turned out all right, because you have a job or spouse, a house, but the internal issues, the challenges, the issues with values and character, they're there, and it's evidence in society today. So we are repeating these things. We shouldn't. We have to ensure that we are truly not insane, and we're seeking alternative strategies. We are learning on an ongoing basis. We're lifelong learners, and we're learning new strategies to raise our children differently. Our parents were not saying they didn't do a good job. They did what they know, given the information that was available to them, which is oftentimes, or which was limited. Now we have significantly more information and more access to information. And as we know better, we must do better.
All right, we are in a digital age where internet is the rave of the moment. Now, this is posing a lot of challenge to parenting, even to parents. Now, what kind of mechanism do you put in place to ensure you monitor the activities of your children, their online activities, to instill, sense of responsibility? At the same time, you're not impeding to their privacy.
Again, as a parenting coach, I keep saying many things. You find that we want privacy for our children. We also want privacy for ourselves. The internet is there. There's access to information. There's a way that you can raise your children and there's trust. There's a way that you can raise your children to have the right values and they know where not to navigate. There are children that they would stumble on an inappropriate site, and they will be the ones to tell their parent this is what happened. And that's because those parents are intentional, they're available, and that kind of relationship does exist between them. Now, I have an almost 18-year-old, pretty much an 18-year-old in March, and she has access to technology, but She's the kind of child that I have access to her mailbox. I manage her Instagram. And these are not children that have dummy accounts, by the way. I'm not talking about that kind of child. There is transparency. I have access to her mailbox. She has access to mine, as a matter of fact. There's Google Family Link available. These are apps. There's QO Studio. These are apps. But when there's transparency, when there's trust, when you raise the child and there's no big secrecy, then you know that the challenges are limited to a significant extent. You are able to guide your child. But then when the trust is not there, and when the parent is not there, because parents really have to be there, because your presence also buys the trust of your children. And I'm not talking about just being physically present, but emotionally absent, mentally absent. So there are parents that, yes, they will tell you that they're stay-at-home moms and they're working from home, but they're constantly on the Instagram, on the Facebook, they're constantly on the TikToks online, and the children are talking to them and they're pressing one thing or the other. They're not there. That's not the kind of parenting I'm talking about. I'm talking about being there. And even if you have access to technology in your home, we have to understand that whatever is not managed is subject to significant abuse. So we must ensure that we are also learning how to be digital literates. We are able to manage it. It's just like eating food excessively or throwing your child in the jungle and saying, go and cook by yourself. This is what happens when we leave our children out there to do whatever they want online. So there are so many ways that we can do it. But people assume that they know what to do. Oftentimes people don't know what to do. Even those of us that work with children, that run schools, that work with parents as coaches, we still continue to learn. We remain lifelong learners, knowing that strategies will continue to change, knowing that we need to keep up with advancing technology so that we can also engage with our children. There are parents that are significantly miles and miles and miles behind their children in what they are doing. They have no clue. Now, I'm not saying that you should become a digital expert because you have children, but you should have an idea. You should have a high-level understanding of the affairs of your children online. And the technology itself must not take over in your home. If it's causing a problem in that home, then get rid of it.
All right, let's talk about development rights. This includes the right to education, the right to play, leisure, and even cultural activities. Looking at the way our system now operates, I'm talking about the education of children and the way children are made to live. When school is in session, it's like from the regular classes to after-school lessons. And when they're on holidays, a lot of parents push their children over to summer classes. Does it look like we're respecting these rights or even taking into account what they mean for the children?
Many people will argue that they need to make a living. Many people will argue that children need to eat and they have to put food on the table. And that is correct. Nobody's saying that is not correct. But what is incorrect is for us not to plan ahead. Now, we can't get the planning accurately, but to a significant extent, we can get it right. It doesn't take a genius to know that the less children that you have, the easier it will be to manage them. It doesn't take a genius to tell you to pace your children and not just have them back to back like a staircase for you to be able to manage that. It is said that many parents that have children, and these are statistics online, under the age of 6, some have 3 children under the age of 6, are subject to mental health challenges. So you can imagine the number of parents, especially women, mothers, who have mental health, subtle mental health challenges, especially things like depression, because they're managing that number of children. So that is happening. So as a result, they would leave the children in school. Extra lesson would happen. The summer schools will happen. And if you're in a good school, yeah, they can help you with the nurturing of your children. But it doesn't take away the space and the importance of you bonding with your children on a one-to-one level, of tucking them in at night, of reading the Bible stories to them, of listening to them, giving them those hugs, and just building those emotional connections with your children. These are the kind of things that are absent in society today, and we need to infuse those things back into our society. Now, people already know that it's challenging. If you ask my 17-year-old, she will tell you, you don't have to be a parent to know that these things are that tough. So why are we still praying at weddings that people should have children in 9 months? Why are we still insisting that people should have a particular gender? Why are we still insisting that they should have a particular number of children? These things are causing problems. We see the problems, but we pretend that we cannot see the elephant in the room. The sooner we begin to manage our families better and our resources better and our time better, then we will begin to see significant improvement when it comes to development of our children, their education, their leisure, and their play.
All right, great, Ronke. You are a school owner, and I would like you to talk to us about what school owners or institutions should do to incorporate the rights of child to programs, policies, and some of the activities schools can come up with to improve the level of awareness and also actively promote the need to respect the rights of children.
It's a tricky one. I'm not even sure it's quite clear to me in terms of policies. What can a school do? I mean, we do have our meetings. We do have our meetings like with NAPS, and we just have to do the advocacy. We have to speak up. We have to have interactions like this that I'm having right here on the Souk. We have to keep on speaking up so that our voices can be heard. Whatever it is that we can do for our children as a school, then we have to get together. We have associations, we have bodies that different schools belong to, and we want to continue to speak up, and hopefully we will be heard. And when it comes to policy making, decision making, it's important that we are seen as stakeholders to be able to express some of these concerns and some of these matters, to be able to table them and discuss them, and to create awareness to our leaders, to our children, to our parents, to any caregiver, anyone that has anything to do with the children, both locally and internationally.
Can do. So what can individuals and organizations do to support children's rights?
Organizations, let me start with organizations. It's important that HR in every organization, it's important that they take family life very, very importantly. It's very important. You know, you will see that there's some people that are working in banks and they don't leave their banks like 9, 10 o'clock. Even when they're working from home, you see, I have friends in that category that they will be online 24/7. They're constantly working. It's important that organizations begin to give parents time, you know, and it's not just mothers, including fathers, because the fathers are very important in the growth and development of their children. So it's so important that organizations prioritize family life. You know, when people have children, they will typically give them the maternity leave. We want to see more of the paternity leaves as well. We want to see that parents are closing. There's flexibility in their working. Some employers, even if the work can be done remotely, no, they must see you physically in the office. I can remember many years ago, in fact, I'm talking about 18 years ago. It's not a matter of many years ago. 18 years ago, the working from home was not a popular thing. It wasn't something that, at least not in Nigeria. I was in the UK then, and I was pregnant with my now almost 18-year-old daughter. Throughout my time in that organization, I worked remotely. The only times I showed up when I had high-level meetings, which was very, very infrequent. And yeah, that was pretty much it. The trust was there. They knew that I would deliver, and I delivered on my work. And it helped me in that time. And I can remember that after I even had my daughter, I was able to work from home still. Even when I returned to the office, there was flexibility in my closing hours. You know, we need to see those sort of things. We need to prioritize the family. We can't just allow people to continually work. You know, I run a school, and you'll find that sometimes parents can't even come for PTAs. Parents can't even pick up their children as often as they would like to pick up their children. They do try their best. But because their employers are at their throats, the flexibility is often not there. So we need to ensure that this is happening. That's something that is very, very key, and it should be happening in many, many organizations.
All right, let's talk about style of parenting for the Jay-Z's and, you know, the crop of generations that you have now. What kind of style of parenting do you think it would be applicable to the present generation for a parent to be able to get results and also not be able to impose his or her will on his or her children?
You see, when it comes to parenting styles, it's a personality thing. It's often a personality thing. The only type of parenting I don't recommend is the authoritarian parenting, the command and control, the militant kind of parenting. That's the only okay. The permissive parenting where you allow the children to do anything they want. No, that doesn't work either. So there should be a balance. I'm a liberal parent. I'm firm, but I'm liberal. I'm the kind of parent that will allow her child to do many things but uphold the values of the family. Now, when parents need to understand that they need to learn, and I can't bang on enough about it, that parents need to learn that this is how to parent a particular type of child, because they want to use the strategies that they used when they were growing up, and it's different now. With the children that are here, they have different experiences. Many of them are digital natives. Many of them have access to so many things. They are social beings, but you want to parent them the same way, just like we started at the start of the conversation, where we don't even want to hear their voices. We don't want them to be speaking they don't want to speak when we are speaking as adults. So we must know that children are different. There are different types of children. You've mentioned the Gen Z children. We also have the Alpha Gen children, Generation Alpha children. They exist and they need that connection with the parents. And if you don't do it early, you will lose the children. You'll find that your influence will be very limited. You'll find that their peers will be the one that are parenting them. They'll be parenting themselves on TikTok because these are the things that are happening. They get a lot of influencers, putting a lot of influencing them negatively, positively, in whatever manner, not necessarily according to your values. Now, if you ask how many families do genuinely have family values that your children understand, they will keep telling you that, oh, I want a godly child. Do you know what it is to have a godly child? Do you know what it means to have a godly child? Do you know that a godly child has to have different expressions? Do you know how to manage that? They don't. But do you want to learn? If you tell them to come to a parenting conference, it's going to be very, very empty. But if you ask parents, come and learn how to make 1 million in 60 days, the hall will be packed full. You won't be able to get people inside. So the sooner people start to prioritize and learn how to parent in particular ways and particular children, the better for all of us and society.
Okay, once upon a time, we spoke with a child psychologist, and then he was talking about the different methods of parenting. It spoke about persuasion. It spoke about insistence. There are different methods that you can use at different times. Now, for persuasion, I can understand that, yes, there are times you need to make the child see reason. And then for insistence, there are times you need to put your foot down and say, this is it. This is how it happens in this home. Now, this is where I'm going. Corporal punishment is something that has been discouraged a lot in homes and in schools. So how then do you insist when a child wants to go one way and you as the adult, knowing to a good extent what is best for the child, and you say, this is my home, I have to a great extent also allowed you to try to see reason with where I want this to be. You can't, in some homes, particularly in other climes, you can't spank the child. You can't flog the child. So how then do you insist on certain rules? And what's your thoughts on corporal punishment?
For me, corporal punishment is a no-no. And one of the reasons is because it doesn't work. It's for lazy parents, and you can quote me anywhere. I have written a book, and I'm not advertising it. It's 101 tips to curb the beating and the shouting. And I'm saying it to let you know that there are so many other strategies to raise a child that does not involve you raising your voice, and it doesn't involve you smacking or beating your children. So there are strategies. But a lot of people are too lazy to learn how to parent their children. They're too lazy to learn to go for courses, to read books. They just want to do what was done to them. And they want to convince themselves that it is okay to parent their children by beating the children. So when they japa, they get into trouble and they begin to take their children away from them. Social services begin to monitor them. These are the things that happen. We know sometimes that we don't behave in Nigeria, but when we go out of Nigeria, somehow we begin to behave. This is because Nigeria has allowed us, and climates like this and African countries have allowed us to abuse our children in different manners. Now, I don't believe in corporal punishment. I run a school and we do not operate using that. I have raised a child and I don't do that. Shouting and beating are completely out of it for me. What works? There are many things that work. I'll give you some example. You must understand the personality child. There's a personality assessment that you can have for every child and for yourself, and you will know how to marry both of them together and how to parent your unique child. What works for child A is not going to work for child B, C, D. They are all different, and you must be flexible enough to learn it. If you are flexible enough to have those children, then you must be flexible enough to learn how to parent each and every child. The more children you have, the more work you are going to have to do, and that is essentially what it is. You will know what works. You will know the disciplining measure. There must be consequences, and when there are consequences for children, it doesn't mean that it has to be corporal punishment, because that is just something that you do immediately. Very short-term results. It doesn't have long-term results. Instead, there's more harm than good. Many people will say they turned out all right. They turned out all right because they have, like I mentioned earlier, the spouse, the job, the house, the car. But they have internal struggles. They are gambling. They're on social media. They're addicted to shopping. They are addicted to taking people's husbands and wives. They're cheating. They are doing things that I can't mention at this time of the day online. You know, they are hooked on those things. That is where the challenges. Those are the challenges, you know, the ones that are not visible, because these are coping mechanisms, you know, coping mechanisms. People are struggling with many things and they do many things. So some people are beating their wives at home. Some people are beating their husbands at home, but they turned out all right because, of course, they are working in the law firms, oil and gas and everything. These are the consequences of the trauma that a lot of people have instilled on their children. The typical African person is struggling with a lot of childhood trauma. They're carrying it around. And look at it. Look at the society. You know, you're moving around on the road. How many people are smiling? How many people are willing to allow you through when you're going on the street? How many people, any small thing, they are really pent up. There's pent up anger. They're waiting to fight. They're waiting for an outburst. And people will insist that they turned out all right. So the challenges are there. We must learn how to parent the children. Now, somebody's going to quote again. Oh, what is she saying? She's saying some rubbish. The Bible says we should spare the rod and spoil the child. And I will tell you that in my book, I also did that research about the rod, which is misunderstood. People assume that it's a physical rod. It isn't a physical rod. The rod of correction is one of discipline in love. It's a rod of miracles. The rod and thy staff, they comfort, they do not strike. And in the book of Deuteronomy, it says that a rebellious child should be stoned to death. Now, do you now stone your children to death because it's in the Bible? Because we misconstrue it and we take what is convenient. We want to do it. And we will fight people like me online that say, don't smack your children. They will say, oh, your own children will be spoiled. When you talk about my own children, she's a high flyer, head girl in one of the biggest schools in Nigeria, head girl abroad. Now that she has gone abroad, she's been on the presidential candidate for to his programs. She's a public speaker. She's done so many things. And this is a child that was raised without beating, without shouting. So this is my space, this beating and shouting thing. So I don't want to go on, otherwise that will be the rest of the show. So let me just stop here for now.
Ronke, we must appreciate you for your brilliant submissions. You know, it's always a pleasure hosting you. We must thank you for your contributions on the UN World's Children Day and some of the submissions you made about parenting. Thank you very much for joining on Elliot's
Thank you so much for the invitation. Have a good day.
All right. So we go on a short break now. You know, it's still another thing quite important. Today is UN's Day, you know, drawing awareness to the victims of road traffic. We're going to have another guest in the studio who is going to talk about this shortly. Stay with us, and that will be after this break.
on social media, many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. We had a very interesting session, and in one of the sessions, there was a role play about a case study on CWG PLC, which is a company that I founded. And the case was written by Columbia Business School to discuss a point about venturing, about entrepreneurship, and about funding for the enterprise. And the case ended on the question, should Austin Okere take the venture capital investment or should he reject it? Just a little bit of background. So this is a company, CWG, in 2005 that was doing very well. It was riding on the back of the Y2K that just happened at the turn of the century, was riding on the back of the telecom boom that happened immediately after the civilian government of OBJ and GSM was launched, was riding on the back of the bank consolidation in 2005 that was done by Governor Soludo. And in each of these booms, CWG had positioned and taken good advantage. So this is not a company that was in dire need of cash or was desperate in 2005. But we had a plan to list our shares on the stock market, and we thought that the best way to do it was to first do either a private placement or, better still, to do a venture capital fundraise so that they will bring discipline into our operations, governance, strengthen our governance, and of course, bring more technical knowledge. And if people saw that this company was invested in you, probably it will make the listing on the stock exchange more attractive. The issue here is at what price? And I remember that I've discussed something similar on this on social media, where many Nigerian young companies were celebrating, wow, we raised Series C, we raised Series D. And anytime they raised these monies, everybody hailed them. But what was behind it? What is behind every raise is that the entrepreneur founder is diluted significantly. So if I use CWG as a case study, the case that was written by Columbia was that there was an offer of $8 million for 25% of the company, putting the valuation post at $32 million. Make no mistake, the Treasury bill's interest rate is 15% sometimes. Now, if someone is going to bring his money to invest in your company, he's looking for way more than that 15%, given that there's a high risk that his money will not come back. And the rule of thumb is that they're looking for 3 times what they brought in within 5 years. So in our case, they were going to be asking for $24 million within 5 years, or you list and give them a liquidity event or an exit. You have to check very well that this $8 million that you're taking in, you can do business in such a way that the value of the company can cough out $24 million in 5 years, regardless of exchange loss. Here is where it gets complicated. So you receive $8 million, which is converted to you in Naira. 2005 probably was about 130. Now, whether the Naira suffers devaluation or not, you're going to pay that $8 million. Now, paying $8 million, 5 years later, where the Naira is maybe 250 or 260, whilst you are generating your revenue in Naira, becomes almost impossible. And if the venture capital firm then has to take assets because you can't pay, he will end up owning, of course, a big chunk of your company, nothing at all. You begin to look like a management staff in the company you founded. So in our own case, we held out and we didn't take the money. And in 2009, when we took a subsequent one, the company was valued at $55 million, plus that there'd been an exchange loss. So the company was valued much more than the $32 million, and plus the fact that in Naira terms, they would have owned more of our company. My point being, don't sell your seed. Rather, till your seeds, let it grow into a fruit, and sell at the fruit because the fruit is plentiful. A lot of our startups rush out to sell their seed, and they sell it cheap. To complete that story, we actually then listed the company in 2013 for $90 million. Now, I did a rough calculation. If we were in dire need of money and we borrowed $8 million at an interest rate of 20%, at that time, Naira, we'll be returning Naira money, and we'll be returning something like, even if you take 100%, we'll be returning another $8 million in 5 years' time. But given that the company's valuation had gone to $55 million in that time, 2009, when the second PE company invested, we would have been better off taking the debt because we'll be returning an extra $8 million rather than 8 times 3, which is 24, that would have had to give $24 million that would have had to pay the VC company if we had taken the money at that time. So the delta is huge in terms of debt versus equity. So the point is, at some point in time, equity seems cheap, deceptively, but debt is cheaper. Especially at the early stages, what you have is a seed. You don't sell your seed. Have patience, hone it, bootstrap it, take debt to finance specific deals, makes you disciplined, and then when you have your fruit, you can then invite investors to come and you make more, and you don't lose a huge percentage of your company. You actually do still own a huge percentage of your company. Be patient. Don't rush out to collect funds and celebrate it. You will have to pay back. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing Eche,
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
Is a critical element of managing the employee-employer relationship, particularly from...
The problem in Nigeria is not corruption, and everybody seems to be very surprised that corruption is not a problem.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has, have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million and...
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange, and our obligation is to shape policy and advance development. Earlier, we had a conversation as regards to World Children's Day. Interestingly, it's a double cap thing, it's a two-way thing. Today is also the UN, a day to draw awareness to the victims of road traffic and road accidents. What do we need to do in this regard? We're going to have a resource person in the studio shortly to talk about this. But let's look at Blessing. Blessing is here.
Yes, I am here.
As usual. So talking about, a special day like this created by the UN as a way to draw advocacy on the need to help victims of road accidents. It's been of concern in recent times where you discover that people find themselves in accidents. It's not always planned. That's why it's called accidents. Yes. But it's all about the mechanism or the things put in place to ensure, the first thing is given to them, which is come to their aid in terms of welfare and for rescue. Now, in recent time, you discover that the FRSC has created some, activities whereby creating emergency units, along expressways, whereby it's easier for people to access, first aid when there's need for them to be rescued and all that. But it's also part of the discussion on a day like this to draw awareness on the need to expand this kind of activity for the public to get involved. The level of public awareness is also important. You have a situation whereby when people get to accident scenes, they don't know what to do. In fact, the annoying thing, you see some people picking up their phones.
They want to film for Facebook.
And, it's become a challenge. And then getting to the scene as well, rather than helping, some will be in position to help, but rather than helping, some will also be in position to impede the activities of these rescue workers. So here, it's a day like this whereby UN feel it's important to create advocacy for people to have proper understanding on what to do with victims of traffic or accidents.
Yes, and statistics has shown that every year about 1.35 million people die from road crash, and the vast majority of the accidents do happen in low and middle income countries due to many factors. One of them is poor road infrastructure, disobedience of road signs, and in some cases you do not have adequate signage on the roads, which will have the FRS speak to much later in the show. But what you were saying, road accident victims, yes, but that also is the reason people respond that way is because sometimes they are at a loss as regards what to do when accident happens. But because we're very compassionate people, you find that people will naturally run to the scene of accident trying to find those they can save. But then there is a fear too, particularly when it's of a severe nature. Who takes the victims to the hospital? Who bears the cost? Because they're accident victims, but yes, you have to pay for them to be attended to when you're taken to the hospital. Now, who attends to the police when a report has to be made? Maybe in the course of taking the victim to the hospital, the victim dies. These are some of the reasons why you find that people are sometimes reluctant to offer help. They just gather at the scene, wailing, but virtually doing nothing. And the training on how to handle accident victims is not something that people just come by. You need to have been trained on maybe how to hold them up, how to assist in cases where there is bleeding, maybe what to do. But we also have the emergency responders sometimes sighted along the road. You find some of them in Lagos State, you find some of these places, but they are not actually enough because accidents can happen anywhere. It can happen within the city, it can happen outside of the city. So we need more of these personnel. We need our roads to be designed in ways that where accidents do happen, the routes to which they can be taken to the hospital is clear. In some places, maybe like Lagos State, you could have that arrangement and people know that this route belongs to the ambulance so that the people can be taken to the hospital really quick, but not in every area. So these are some of the areas that we need to look at. And then the way people drive too, it's as if it's a problem. When the road is bad, drivers complain the road is bad. When the road is fixed and is smooth, it's time for us to speed off without care in the world. So these are some of the issues.
Blessing, you're doing well. Let me bring in the wise man. We have been joined by in-house analyst, Dr. Idauza Samanzi. We always call him the wise one. The wise man is here. Glad to have you join us on this segment once again.
My pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Today is a special day dedicated by UN to draw awareness, public awareness to the need and the welfare of the victims of road traffic and road accidents. I would like to have your take on why you think a day like this is very significant and what should be the kind of narrative or advocacy that should come up on a day like this.
I think it's a very important thing for the world to set a day like this to remember a lot of people. And then you have very important people really also who have been victims of road crashes. And this calls for concern, but like research has shown that most of these crashes happen as a result of human failing. And this is why this particular year edition of Remembrance Days, which is focused on justice, is actually also very significant, where people are really being held culpable for causing the death of other people or having them sustain very severe and terrible injuries that makes them not to be able to function. So I think for me it's quite worthwhile to celebrate or remember these people who died through this unfortunate incident that man made. But just like Blessing has said, you look at it, where the biggest problem we'll have, most especially in the third world, is that so many things have no consequence. And so people really don't care. And this is where the issue of justice becomes fundamental. Yes, we have the road safety that are supposed to be ensuring that people drive within limits, and then, of course, ensure that vehicles that are on road are in good motorable state. But elsewhere, you see, rules, regulations have been able to solve that. Take, for example, if you go to the UAE and you kill somebody while driving, you understand what it means. The penalty is so severe that every driver is conscious while he's driving. Don't need any human being to be on the road. And I think this is where really countries like Nigeria, we really need to play. Because you see, most of these duplication of agencies that we'll have that is creating a lot of nuisance on the road are really not needed. What is needed is the fact that there are also things that we can actually track with technology. The other day I was in Kigali, and then one of the cab driver who was taking us was caught on a camera making telephone call. Then the next stop, he saw a policeman. They just pulled him aside and showed him on their device that he was making a call, and then, of course, enter his plate number details. And right there, as he was standing, a fine of 25,000 Rwanda franc was meted out to him, and he became very humble. So the following day, I was asking him, and I said, what happened? He said, well, he still have 2 or 3 days window, but the issue is that he has to look for money now to go pay that fine, because if at the end of 3 days and he's not been able to pay this fine, of course the fine will become 35,000, and then daily the thing will be accumulating demurrage. Now all these things are put in place to put human beings to check, and I think this is where the emphasis actually should be for us. In the UAE, if your car is confiscated, is parked in your house, devices are placed on it, and that car is on demurrage, in your house you will be paying if you commit traffic offense. And get to some places, of course, your driver's license are withdrawn, and you can never drive all your life as long as you live in that terrain. So when you have these very dire consequences, you find that it will go a long way mitigating that the kind of the exploitative measures you find, especially in our own climb here, where all that is required is that some people stand on the road and all they want from the driver is to get some money from them. And so people really don't take them serious anymore. And I think this is where really the road safety need to up their game and see how to use technology to drive this process. I know of some people who are driving today in a Lausa area, and they are all very careful. It's not because there's any policeman standing, it's not because they understand that there are cameras in those areas. that when you drive past the camera and you commit an offense, the camera snaps you. If your documents are not okay and you pass through that road, you will be caught. And when these are happening, you find that people become very cautious in the way they drive. And that can also go a long way in reducing this precious life that we're losing to traffic and road accidents.
Now, regarding the use of signage or having certain signage on our roads, some drivers don't even know what they mean or how to interpret them. But the driving school is supposed to take care of that. But as we know in reality, not everyone goes through the driving school. So what can we do in that aspect so that there are signage to tell you maybe where there's a speed break ahead or when the road has a curve at certain points, how you should drive? What kind of training would people need, even though you're already driving and you already have a driver's license?
Yeah, I think that's where people talk about the strengthening of institutions. Many institutions in Nigeria, they are very weak. And this is why a lot of people can just go through some things and they go scot-free. If you have very strong institutions, nobody gets on driving to say, oh, you are driving without really going through a driving school. How can it happen? You can't see that in the UK, you can't see that anywhere else. The only place you can find that it happens only in our place. And this is why a lot of people don't even have special regard for our own driver's license. Because a lot of people just get driver's license even without being to driving school. Because there's a whole lot of rent-seeking in that terrain. We need people who really become very strong morally to be able to say, well, things should be done and done well. Because the truth is that you're supposed to be learning driving, both theoretical and in practice. That's the way it's done everywhere in the world. But here, there's a whole lot of impunity. People do things, get away. You get bus driver, as a conductor, stay in the road for some time, move motor, and then the next day is on the road driving. And then you get to the agencies that are supposed to be controlling this, and if you are arrested and then you can negotiate your way, you get through. So this makes it like an incentive for these infractions. I think we need to strengthen our institutions and make them really work. Yeah, yes, road safety is doing their bit, but I think they can do more. You see, most of the problem we have with regulators in Nigeria is that we are too punitive than corrective. Now, when you remember when the road safety course started those early days, they may give you a fine of 100 naira, but you have to travel all the way to Maiduguri to go and pay that fine. So people were really very careful to commit crime. But today, they have their ticket with them and you just pay in the bank, then you're free. You see, because it's not painful enough. Because if the whole idea is to be corrective, then you want to ensure that people are doing what is right, that is not revenue driven. You see, there'll be a lot of compliance. But unfortunately, we have made it punitive. That people say, well, if you commit any crime, you saw 20,000, saw 10,000, then you move free. Tomorrow you commit another one. There's really no documentation. But that's where you see, once you commit a crime, it's documented. And once you repeat again, then of course you go on suspension. If you repeat it a third time, then your driver's license is withdrawn permanently. So because there's a record system. And I think this is what we need to evolve. That people will be able to see that they have made series of offenses, and in the eye of the regulator, they are saying this person is not correctable, this person is not trainable or teachable, therefore he should not be a danger on the road. And that way we will be able to reduce these numbers we're talking about, road accidents, especially that are happening in third world countries.
I imagine someone committing a traffic offense in Lagos State and you have to go to Maiduguri to pay the fine and you must appear physically. But by the time the person considers the time it would take to make the journey to and fro, what they would lose in terms of money and business because of that time, it serves as a deterrent already. People may thinking about it.
All right. Let's look at in cases where you have emergencies, where there are accidents. Most of the time, you realize that the earliest form of respondents, they are the community dwellers, the people who live around that area, who are not even armed with the right skills or the right expertise to handle that kind of situation. What kind of community engagement do you expect from stakeholders, from government, to ensure that it's an holistic approach to ensuring the safety of accident victims?
I think there's so much to learn from Lagos. Other states can really learn from Lagos. Lagos has been able to create that structure to manage accidents, and it's almost real time. All you need to do if you are in that scene is to just make a dial, and in less than 5 minutes, a trained expert will show up to address the issues. Even in case of tank fire incidences, Lagos has been able to really set the pace in that area. And you also see in strategic place, the former governor of Lagos, Bola Tinubu, actually has stationed in some ambulances in strategic locations, so that if there are road crashes or accidents on the road, and of course there's a close by ambulance, that of course you have doctors who are there and they are able to attend to these victims. But I think that is a better way to go than the crowd kind of mentality we see in most other states. Accident happen, the crowd is so much that people are taking photographs and they are not even really conscious of those who are dying, and this is the issue. But again, if our educational systems are working, those first aid actually should be taught to children so that we know how to handle some certain people who are victims of road accident, and we don't allow them to bleed to death, or maybe they are in trauma, we're able to resuscitate them without necessarily have to get to the hospital before that's done.
Okay, it's good that they talk about treat first, save life first, before asking for money to be deposited has come up really frequently and recently. But what's your take on that? How should it be handled? Because even from the position of the hospitals, you find that the doctors make a case to say, oh, this is not a charity organization, you need money to run it. And sometimes when some accident victims are treated, maybe nobody comes up to show for them. And so the money doesn't come back to the hospital. But is there a way to run this, that the hospital doesn't suffer, and at the same time, accident victims are attended to first before money is demanded, saving lives first?
I think the way to go really is to insure citizens. And I think that can really work when there is a proper insurance on the citizens, and then of course the insurance are working. Now, even the third-party insurance, of course, which we do here, a lot of people really do not understand what it meant for. Such cases where you have those crashes and accidents, and those people who, those vehicles with third-party insurance, because they have an accident against a third party, and the third party actually could benefit from that insurance. But this enlightenment and education is short in supply. So people just take it as a part of the regulation that you must have insurance paper on your vehicle so that you will not be arrested by road safety of people. But the benefit that's accruing to the citizens who eventually become victims is also not amplified. These are the real issues. But of course, you find if the insurance system in Nigeria starts to really work, some of these issues can actually be addressed. Because, like I said, hospitals are not supposed to be charity organization. And I was talking to a lady doctor the other day, and he said, well, you see, experience has shown. Where she's working, one of the hospitals in Lagos here, he said, look, we have a lot of abandoned children. We have a lot of abandoned cases. Some people escaped. And then, of course, nobody is able to account for all these things. So this is the real reason why people want to see some level of commitment before they get into treatment. Otherwise, you also have to bear the responsibility. And don't also forget, really, that you also need somebody who also is responsible for that patient that is brought into the hospital. You see a crowd bringing somebody into the hospital, and they want the hospital to start, and they are not willing to take responsibility. So these are some of the things that you see around. But I think that if a government initiative like having emergency hotlines and the rest of it can go a long way really in addressing some of these issues.
All right. Idauza, we must appreciate you for spending time with us and for sharing your thoughts on this subject. Thank you so much for always coming to our rescue. All right, we'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll continue the discussion on the UN awareness for road victims, and that's going to be with another guest. That will take place after this short break.
How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange, and today we're looking at UN awareness on road traffic victims. It's very important on a day like this to draw advocacy on the need to help victims of road accidents or road traffic. What do we need to do as a nation or as a road users? What are the necessary things you need to know, especially at a period like this where a lot of activities, social activities are always at the peak? To draw advocacy and to also strengthen this discussion, we are being joined by a special guest. We are being joined by Esther Uzoma, who is the FRSC Commander, Lagos Highland Unit. Glad to have you join us on Lane Extinct this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here one more day.
Welcome to the studio. All right, looking at today, it was yesterday rather, 19th of November every year is the remembrance for road traffic victims. And according to the figure, it's quite large when you think about over 1.35 million people being involved or dying from road traffic accidents yearly on a global scale. What is the FRSC doing to enlighten road users on the very important things that they should know to prevent road traffic accidents?
Yes, the figure you quoted just now is alarming. And the most gruesome part of it is that 90% of that figure comes from developing countries, of which Nigeria is the giant of Africa. So it means the portion that comes to Nigeria is high too. So road safety is doing everything in its power to reduce the number of death on the road. And young people between the ages of 5 to 29 years are mostly affected, and that is the crop of a nation's manpower. So we have a lot of things we have put in place. Just this Ember Months, we have most of the commands have launched the Ember Month rally, where we prepare for the Ember Month operations. Most of the commands had rallies where they had interactions with the motoring public, and these rallies were mostly held in parks where we have most of the drivers. So they were educated this year's theme was is speed thrills but kills. Drive responsibly, avoid overloading. Now, speed contributes to about 90% of the cause of road crashes. If we can kill the speed, we will tremendously reduce the number of people that perish on the highway. So during these Ember Month rallies and public enlightenment programs, we educated the motoring public on the need to slow the speed. Yes, when you're driving at a high speed, it is like drug. But then the devastation that comes from it is unimaginable. So we try to tell drivers to make sure that they cut down on speed. There are different speed limits for for various vehicles and for different roads. The speed you use at the express on the highway is not the same you will use at inside the town, at built-up areas where you have the market, where you have the schools. So we encourage drivers to slow down and maintain the speed that is expected of them at any point they are driving and for the particular vehicle they are driving. An articulated vehicle cannot be going at 100 kilometers an hour. It is terrible. So apart from the public enlightenment programs at the parks, we also carry out domesticated public enlightenment programs at the churches and the mosques. And we also go to schools and teach children how to use the roads. We tell them how to use the zebra crossing and the pedestrian crossing too. You find it funny that people will want to cross the express and they walk across the express. But beside them, you see the pedestrian crossing. They will not use it. They are endangering their lives. So we teach people, the general public, actually. Then we advise the drivers, because drivers should avoid drinking alcohol beverages while they are driving, because you cannot drive when your senses are not in order. We also tell them not to take all these psychotropic substances that will affect their reflex action. Drugs, even the recommended drugs, you must, look for what if the drug says do not operate machinery while you are on the drug. You leave it. That's for the medically acceptable ones. For the hard drugs, it is a no-no. Then we also tell them to make sure that their vehicles are in good order. You cannot be driving a mechanically deficient vehicle and expect to go safely. Anything can happen. Ensure that your tires are okay. Worn-out tires are bad. Make sure that the brake system of your vehicle is also working well. So these are some of the things we tell the motoring public to abide, especially this period of the year, the Ember Month, when economic activities and the social activities are on the high. So we encourage people to mellow down, forget the rush, calm down.
All right, let's look at in the context of road accidents. I would like you to talk about some of the support system that has been put in place, to help victims, because it's covered most of the time when these accidents happen. You have people around that area who always be in position to assist, but they are not professionals. So before the activities of the FRS, I would like you to talk about some of the support system or the infrastructure or the mechanism being put in place to support victims of accidents, and not just the victims, also their families.
Okay, first and foremost, when we have or we receive a report of a crash at any place, whether by call, because we have a toll-free call, 112, that people use to call the call center, and the calls are relayed to the nearest command to where the crash occurred. We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby. So the first thing that is done is for the men on duty to rush immediately to that crash point and rescue the people. And in so doing, They also make sure that they control the traffic, they clear obstruction. They make sure that another crash does not occur at the crash point. So when they come, they secure the place, control the traffic, evacuate the victims to the nearest hospital. Then we know that there are places road safety may not be near. We have been training people. We call them the first responders. Like in my command, there's a mechanic village there. Most of the people working there, both men and women, have had cause to come for training on rescue. So these first responders, if they're anywhere there's a crash, they can go to start assisting before putting a call to the road safety office to come and then do the needful. So Federal Road Safety has partnered with individuals, the public, and some NGOs in this training. That is what we do to make sure that the crash victims are attended to promptly. And we have 5 minutes response time. Then apart from that, if a crash occurs that requires an investigation, we have the staff that will investigate the crash. And if it is found that the driver was at fault, maybe due to carelessness or not doing what he's supposed to do, the matter is escalated for prosecution to the appropriate authority. And then we engage the families also.
Okay, in ensuring that the rules of road safety are adhered to, what are some of the ways you enforce that? You talked about drunk driving, but we find that in motor parks, what you find people selling there are alcoholic beverages. It's a regular practice at several motor parks, particularly those ones that go out of the city, do interstate travels. You also find that there's a lot of smoking around those areas, whether of cigarettes or other kinds of substances happen around this. What is the road safety doing to ensure that, yes, they may be able to drivers may be able to get alcoholic beverages from other places, but it's not positioned right in front of them to discourage the use of alcohol for drivers?
Road safety has partnered with the National Union of Road Transport Workers. There's no park that alcoholic beverages are sold now, as at now, because we have, sensitized the union, and through them sensitize the drivers, and we have agreed that alcoholic beverages should not be sold in parks. So that one is a settled matter. Then with the continuous public enlightenment program, every morning, there are 7 days in a week, before the patrol team leaves for their patrol, they will first of all go to a number of parks. They go to the park, we call it early morning safety cry. They meet with the drivers before they take off, and they tell them the implication of going to have alcoholic beverages, even on the way, apart from the park. They tell them the consequences of such. They teach them how to, ensure that their vehicles are in order, so that they don't risk their lives and the lives of their passengers. So we take this as a serious matter. That's why every day the patrol teams must go to the park before leaving for the normal patrol.
Okay, quickly, let me just ask you about road signs. We used to find that on different roads, there are signs to tell you things about the road as a driver. If there is speed brake on the road, it's shown. If the road has a curve, those things. So what are we doing now to ensure that we have all of those road signs necessary, and that every driver can interpret the road sign? Because the sign may be there, but because maybe the driver didn't go through a driving school, he doesn't know what the sign means.
And that is why we discourage drivers, anybody who did not go for driving school, driving a vehicle. Now the system is such that you cannot obtain a driver's license without going through the proper training. We have a tripartite arrangement where the VIS trains the driver and tests the driver, and thus we have accredited driving schools. When they have gone through the accredited driving schools, They are tested by the VIS before they come to process their driver's license at the FRAC office. So, and during this training, because they are being trained by accredited driving schools, they are put through the knowledge of all the road signs so that they will know what to do when they see a sign. So anybody that is going to drive without obtaining a valid driver's license who is arrested immediately. It is found out that somebody is driving without a valid driver's license, because it's a serious offense. The person is a danger to himself and to other members of the public. So we make sure that during our enforcement, we look out for people who are not licensed to drive, and we arrest them, and they are not allowed to drive.
All right. Let's look at this issue of third-party insurance. I would like you to educate us. Does that cover victims of accidents? Most of the time, the third-party insurance is usually applicable to vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. I would like you to educate us and also talk about the insurance, arrangement for victims of road accidents, if there's any.
Okay, insurance policies is not part of road safety mandates, so I cannot speak on that now.
Okay, but what I'm asking is because, it's part of, for you to register your vehicles, it's part of the documents, that has to be provided. And for some of these road users, if these vehicles are part of the necessity that you should have as a vehicle owner, I want to believe it should be also part of the thing that should be extended in covering the welfare of accident victims.
There is an agency, I think, that is responsible for that. Our focus is making sure that people who are driving have a valid driver's license. Making sure that people who are driving are qualified to drive, and the vehicle are in order, the vehicle they are using to drive, that they are in order, and make sure that they obey the traffic rules and regulations. So every agency has its own responsibility cut out for it, and the insurance aspect is not within the purview of Federal Road Safety Corps.
All right. Let me ask you your opinion. I would like to know what's obtainable now. We used to have a situation where accident victims are being rejected by some hospitals. I don't know what has been the situation in recent times, and then what are the best way to handle this kind of issue when it occurs?
It's actually an offense for a hospital to reject a traffic crash victim. So, but we work in partner with hospitals. We go to them too and speak with them on the need to always accept victims of crash, that's traffic crash. So it is expected that any hospital that is approached by the members of Federal Road Safety who have rescued some crash victims and now evacuated them to the hospital, it is expected that the first thing the hospital should do is to accept them and render the prompt trying to save their lives. So.
All right, thank you very much, Esther Uzoma, who is the FRC Commander, Lagos Island Unit, for talking to us today about road safety. This is the season where a lot of activities happen. People move from here and there, so traffic is quite high in a lot of areas. So we hope that the road safety will help in every capacity that it can to ensure that people obey traffic signs. And on roads where the traffic signs need to be, we also hope that the road safety will ensure that those signs are there, people drive safely to their destinations this season.
Yes, we try our best to make sure by teaching people don't overspeed, don't speed because speed thrills but it kills. Make sure that your vehicle is in a good condition. Make sure your tires are okay. Make sure that you don't take drugs while you're driving. Ensure that you obey traffic rules and regulations. And when we see that any road needs road infrastructure, we reach out to the Ministry of Works, whose responsibility it is to put these road signs, because we carry out what they call traffic audit, road audit. So during this road audit, the staff that goes will identify black spots that need some science or maintenance, and we reach out because we work in partnership with the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Transport, and they do the needful.
Thank you very much for being with us on the show today. Let's take a break and turn to another matter after this time. Stay tuned. How can indigenous languages be promoted in a country like this?
Statistics show that less than 10% of Nigeria, the population of Nigeria, has have access to health insurance. You imagine if our population is about 200 million. And
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Okay. All right, thank you for staying with us. Let's turn our attention now to global trade partnership, the opportunities and challenges in global trade. Yes, countries make partnerships, they align with other countries that they think can have good trade with them. Nigeria has lots of trade partners, but it's not just enough for you to have a trade partner. The question is, what are you trading in? And on the balance of trade, are you at a deficit, or are you actually making gains, trading more with your partners than they are with you? Those are some of the issues that we'll be looking at tomorrow. How do you make new partnerships? What are the opportunities in global trade? What are the challenges to having partnerships in trade? We'll be joined shortly by someone who will actually talk more about that. But first of all, I need to ask Femi regarding the partnerships that Nigeria has had with several countries in trade. Of recent, our trade has been ending in deficit. How do we correct that?
It's quite important that we check our policies, because everything starts and ends with your policy. Interestingly, we have a president now who understands how global economics or international affairs works, and is doing everything possible in that area to ensure that he corrects the narrative. But what I think is so critical is to also check, domestic policies to ensure that it's at par with international policies, to ensure that we're in a competitive, position to be able to take advantage of the opportunities inherent in the global space when it comes to the global market, and then every other opportunity.
All right, thank you very much, Femi. Now to join us on the discussion is Ambassador Williams Wallace. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Can you
Please,
hear me?
can you unmute yourself? It seems your mic is muted.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about global trade partnerships. Now, different countries are partners to the others when it comes to trade. How does a country position itself strategically for partnership? What are the things to consider when picking a trade partner as a country?
Well, if you're picking a trade partner, you have to ensure that there are win-wins on both sides. First and foremost, you have to choose partners that are strategic with your policy for gain. So if you are looking at what you produce, you have to ensure that, one, you have your markets both domestically, regionally, and internationally, and that your partners are willing to purchase from you at a good price and a good trade price. And you, on the other hand, might have to be willing from their side to purchase from them. And it should be a win-win so that you don't end up with trade deficits and that you are doing all the purchasing and buying and you can't sell.
All right, Ambassador, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange once again. It's a pleasure hosting you. I would like you to educate us on the importance of global alliance and then the comparative advantage when it comes to global, trade and partnership.
Yes. Well, global alliances, you have to choose your partners well. Those who are aligned with your policy in terms of your strategic policy for the country and the country's economy. Comparatively, everybody works for their country. You hear the Americans say it, you hear the Chinese say it, and they then start to develop, the environment to ensure that they can produce to sell. Chinese have become factories, in every part of their provinces. Americans drive their economy as well by a lot of manufacturing and industrial action. So Africa and Nigeria, which has, great technology-minded people, should now be thinking of knowledge-based systems and manufacturing and putting factories in place to manufacture finished goods so that comparatively you are meeting your opposite number on the same playing field, level playing field. But if you don't, and you are just a buyer, where's the comparative advantage? What you're doing is that you are just one of the markets that they're exploiting, and you cannot exploit any other market. And I dare say that sometimes when African countries also get into production, you get very stiff penalties in terms of goods and quality, and they force your prices based on what they accept for the market.
At this time, Nigeria is looking for lots of partners. The president is wooing investors wherever he goes to. Now, what other areas that Nigeria has comparative advantage that the country should be building on in order to have a balance of trade favorable to Nigeria?
Okay, we have a vast land mass area, almost 1 million square kilometers, and a lot of it is arable land. Agriculture absolutely should be one of the key things that the president and the country should be looking at, utilizing the mass land area for agriculture. We have minerals. It's important that we have those minerals and those mineral resources mined properly. And when I say mined properly, you bring technology, you create partnerships with the local communities, and the local communities can have transfer of technology and training instead of us having, most of the young being exploited. We have to be like Ghana did a little example of it, but they have not continued. Put a factory in every community where you have resources. Build on your agricultural wealth that we've had before, where Nigeria was a food basket, essentially. Nigeria can recreate that food basket. I know we are doing rice and going to other areas of wheat and other products that are most needed, both in your near market of West Africa and the African continent. And then your surplus is what you export. Trinidad has a very nice model on local content, and that's one of the things that I think we need to do, deepen our local content. And the deepening of local content is that you participate in every aspect of the value chain of whatever you do in the country. That is where you'll get comparative advantage. Yes, wing investors is one thing, but what are the investors going to bring to add value to your policy? And it's not just about bringing investors in and they're, you're flagging their money. What is the transfer of knowledge, transfer of training, transfer of technology, and transfer of skills that they are going to use for benefiting the economy to give us comparative advantage?
All right. If you look at the statistics, China is dominating the global trade, partnering with about 120 countries. What kind of alliance do you think a country like Nigeria can form with a country like China, who is trading with over 120 countries? And then what impact will this have on the economy of Nigeria?
Okay, one of the very first things is just use the same Chinese example. China, what did they do? They looked inward for about, 50 years, and then they had a clear focus, 5-year plans, and they wanted to make sure that they became the importer of technology from the US, from the West, mimicked it or actually partnered with it, and then said, okay, come and do all your manufacturing here. And all the companies from the US, etc., came and established there. They did reverse engineering. And at the end of the day, they became the world's industrial hothouse. Now, Nigeria could do the same. Say to China, okay, you manufacture a lot of machinery. Show us how to manufacture some of those machineries. Set up model factories like the Chinese with the Chinese. That is the way that you have win-wins that I talked about earlier on. You must have win-wins. It's not a question of, yes, you have this, we keep buying, we keep procuring, and there's no comparative advantage. We either have to have comparative advantage because we have the resources, so we can have comparative advantage by saying, okay, invest for a period of time, but make everyone, for example, in the communities participant in that process. They are trained, not you just bring Chinese workers and you bring your equipment and then you exploit the resources and then you go. No, you participate, you make sure that Nigerians have the skills, have the technology training, have the transfer of technology, and become shareholders. So if you're using your machinery because we don't have it, train us how to make it, train us how to use it, and then manufacture locally and let the communities and the country be participant as shareholders. That would be my policy to the Minister of Economy, Wale Edu, and Minister of Finance, and the Ministry of Industry. Those are things, and the Bank of Industry, those are things that I would like to see happen in our country.
Let's look at the AFCFTA. It is expected to increase trade between African countries by 53% in 2030 and also create 18 million jobs across Africa. What are the factors that will facilitate the feasibility of the AFCTA?
Right, a very good question there. What will facilitate is acceleration of a standard mean of exchange, standard currency that will facilitate, at the side of sovereign currency, trading between the nations, because that is the bugbear. I'm happy to say that we have been working on a standard United Digital African Currency Contract. And the currency contract is based on digital blockchain. It is now trusted that blockchain is a means of exchange. And digital currency has already a classic reference point, the euro. The European nations, when they wanted to trade among themselves and wanted to move away from the dollar and also sterling, had to come up with a digital currency. Before it became paper, it was a digital form of contract. And it is a perfect example of how nations who wish to trade within themselves, and the European Union is a union, just like the African Union is a union, and need a digital currency. So using blockchain technology that is transparent, and the other fact is that we have trillions of dollars, if you want to put a reference point, worth of reserves in the earth of Africa, right? Which is second to none anywhere else in the world. And therefore, why the need to use any other currency than a standard United Digital Currency contract for trading among ourselves?
The president of Kenya, Ruto, is advocating for a united, form of currency for Africa, a unified form of currency for Africa. Interestingly, you also came up with some initiative recently, the SUPDAC thing. I would like you to shed more light on this your initiative, and then the significance of having a unified currency for Africa.
Right. Okay. So if I could just let you hear this. A practical integrated blueprint is long overdue for overhauling the fundamentals of local, community, regional, and global economic sustainability. How business is transacted, profits are utilized, and how our more advanced knowledge and technology can better serve our individuals, our society, and our planet is the metamorphosis that is required. So what we looked at is, how do we do that? We looked at an architecture, which my partner, Dr. Mark Hewitt, he's innovated. He's ex-IBM, and he worked on the blockchain technology over the years that came out of IBM. And we looked at what is required to unify, the payments. You already have a payment settlement system that is existing in Africa at the moment, and I think Kenya is adopting it, which is good, and we will be partnering with them. We're looking at partnering with them because that's a settlement system. But your idea of how to trade and how to be secure with those transactions are aided by blockchain technology. You can see every transaction transparently. You can see who transacted what, when, where, what time, right down to an infinite minute or second. And you can trade safely knowing that your transaction is in open architecture. You do not have to get rid of your individual sovereign currency. But I think with time, like Europe did, because don't forget, Europe had the lira, they had the mark, they had all the other currencies. And then it was at the side of developing the euro. Eventually, to trade and to ensure that they were able to trust that new form of payment system, they slowly got rid of their individual currencies. And I foresee that is what is going to happen for us in Africa. The SUDAC is a standard United Digital African Currency contract. We start with a contract first, because then you are contracting between yourselves. And you're seeing a standard form of contract that is trusted and sustainable and is unified and is based on local resources. And for that, it's a way forward. President Ruto, yes, is pioneering and has talked about it. And we are meeting, hopefully with him very soon, for him to champion what we have innovated as a means of exchange for contract and trade within the ACFTA. Because if the ACFTA is to move forward, what, as your presenter has just asked, it has to be accelerated. Apart from breaking down borders and free travel within the union, the important thing is a standard means of exchange and a standard sustainable currency contract like the euro, which is our perfect example. If you look at the history of the euro, and if you monitor how the euro was developed and evolved, and it is a standard currency today, it was based on trade, that they wanted to trade between themselves because all their currencies were weak.
All right. Could you talk to us about the current trends in global trade partnerships, and what can Nigeria learn from that?
The current trend still goes back to winning comparative advantage. You termed it correctly, comparative advantage. The trend is comparative advantage. Where do you go? Why do you go? What are the comparative advantages for each country? So for Nigeria, you have to look at those who are leading, in world trade and partner with them, yes, but you partner on the basis that it is a win-win for both countries. It's a win-win for both trading partners. It is no longer going to be business as usual, where Africa becomes the dumping ground for all goods and services manufactured and sold from abroad. We have technologies just like India has. I mean, India is now the reference point for IT. They are in every aspect of the value chain of any IT company anywhere in the world. What they do, the Indian government decided that Mumbai would become the IT center of the world, and they trained. You see, again, it's talking about local content. They trained all of their local knowledge-based skilled graduates in IT, and then they farmed them out to the world. So Nigeria has quite a lot of IT knowledge-based individuals. I mean, you just have to visit Computer Village in Lagos or anywhere in the country, and you see young kids coming up with apps, coming up with so many things. But what do they need? They need funding. So I would call on the Bank of Industry and other investment bankers and what we call angels in the country to start, hot housing, setting up, hot housing in all of these communities within the country. So maybe the Minister of Economy, I will call on him, Wale Adun, who I know quite well when he was Commissioner of Finance in Lagos State. We worked together when I did security printing of their tax and income tax and revenue documents. So, and he's very switched on. And I would say to him, hot house in almost every aspect of the country, young incubators for IT technology. Let Nigeria be exporting our knowledge. Get comparative advantage from this.
Talking about the African Continental Free Trade, the pact and the agreement, what role do you expect of President Tinubu, having been the chairman of ECOWAS and international bodies like the African Union? What are your expectations from those bodies to ensure that, the target for the agenda for Africa in 2063 is being achieved in this purpose?
Why do we want to go to 2063? That is a bugbear for me. Africa should set their own goals. I set up an organization called ADGI, African Development Goals Initiative. What do we look at and what do we want to look at? You must look at yearly goals. We can't wait for 2063. 2063 is a far off milestone that, many of the people who are here now in policy and strategic planning would not be there in 2063. We have 4-year terms in most countries, 5-year terms. Set yearly agendas. The yearly agendas should be, what do we want to do this year? All the countries of the African Union should say and get together with their peers and say, this year we are going to achieve food security for all. And everybody puts their budget towards food security for all. Next year, health for all. Every country in the union puts their budget for health for all. Next year, education. We put our budget, free education, right up to PhD in our countries. You are now building the continent. The role of ECOWAS, the role of AU is to build the continent. What the hell are we talking about 2063? I don't believe in 2063. I'm sorry. Let us plan yearly for the African continent. The AU has a role to play. And that role to play is to ensure that all the countries on the continent rise with the same development goals. Why are we having individual goals and planning and lending ourselves to international goals, which has nothing relevant to what we need to achieve on the continent. Sorry, I'm a Pan-Africanist and I will speak freely about this. There's no need for us to talk about 2060 and all these other SDGs and UN goals, etc. That's nonsense.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Williams Wallace. So he's the Honorable Consul General of Antigua and Barbuda to Nigeria. We value your contributions so much this morning. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
All right, that's been the show today on Early Exchange. We've talked very much about the international observation. We began with World Children's Day, and we also looked at the remembrance for road traffic victims. And we wrapped up with global trade partnerships. We can say it's been a complete show talking about development and, of course, the economies of the world. Africa, and of course, Nigeria. I am Blessing AHA. There will be Business Insight at 10 a.m. Please do join us on Sick News. The show continues tomorrow. Early Exchange, 7 a.m. West African time is when you can join again. I'm Blessing AHA. Do have yourself a great day.
And the conversation continues on our social media platform, on our YouTube platform. You can also share your view using the hashtag Early Exchange. Have a productive day. I am Femi Ayodele.